ladies and gentlemen, we have Antonio Juliano joining us on the other side of the mic, the co-founder and once again CEO of dYdX. You had a sort of a Michael Corleone moment where, just when you thought you were out, they, I guess, pulled you back in a sense. And this isn't your first time on the show, I should point out. I think this might be your second at least. Walk us through the story behind your return. What inspired the decision?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They pulled me back in, but I did leave and stepped down as CEO about 6 months ago and came back just about a month ago at this point. And really where the decision to leave was coming from was, I think, just some big questions I was asking myself on, was this what I wanted to keep doing for a long time, i.e. decades? And I think that there's big questions that goes through one's mind when you start asking yourself this. Mm-hmm. For me, I've been at dYdX for over 7 years at this point. It's been in crypto for about 10 years. And I still and have always really believed in the space. I think I was just starting to wonder, did I want to retire? Did I want to keep doing this? And was this what I wanted to dedicate my life to? And really what I found in that space I took from the company for a couple months there was that I did. And that's why I came back. I think there is and continues to be a huge opportunity with dYdX, with DeFi generally. And I think we're starting to see that reflected in the market now.
Pretty nice timing in a sense, given the outcome, or at least the second order effects of the election and the victory of former President-elect Donald Trump. It's been a huge tailwind for DeFi and assets tied to DeFi, I guess just because it will result in Chair Gensler no longer overseeing this agency, so the SEC. So you have the fog of war between the industry and Chair Gensler lifting, and that's been a huge benefit or unlock, I think, for DeFi. How do you sort of see how dYdX has evolved along with DeFi, and given this shift that we're seeing, what does the next 12 years look like? What type of interest do you think we'll see?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, dYdX is one of the OGs in DeFi at this point. 7 years is quite a while. So yeah, we've blazed some new products. We were the first to offer margin trading and then the first to offer derivatives within DeFi. Now that's a pretty popular thing to do. Like everyone and their mother has a perps DEX, which is cool. So there's a lot of competition, but I think at the same time, that means there's just quite a lot of interest in the space. And so what we're focused on at dYdX right now is really just two things. First of all, continuously improving the product. We've made a lot of strides, especially in the past year or two, towards offering an experience that is close to comparable with centralized exchanges. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing we're really focused on is what type of novel products can we offer because we're in DeFi. And the thing that we're about to release is dYdX Unlimited, which is a combination of a few things. It's instant market listings. So this means that anyone can come to dYdX, instantly add any market they might want to trade, similar to a Uniswap or a pump fund. And then second of all, we're adding automated market makers on dYdX with what we're calling the Mega Vault. And this is just an automated market maker strategy that quotes all markets on dYdX. And dYdX has for a long time been focused on order book trading, which is really what you need to offer these more sophisticated types of markets. But at the same time now, we're really focused on offering new markets, offering them quickly. And we've seen AMMs perform better with liquidity for long tail markets. So we really feel that by being able to offer the best of both worlds here, order books and AMMs, is going to create this kind of tiered liquidity structure where markets can start out just being traded on an AMM. Then once they get enough traction, more professional market makers can come in and provide the highest levels of liquidity.
What do you think? What's the delta between those two experiences? Like how much liquidity can sort of Mega Vault sustain relative to that next sort of stage where the market makers can come in?
It really depends on the market. So when you launch a market on dYdX now, if you're a user, it's tied to providing liquidity in the Mega Vault for that market. So you basically have to deposit currently $10,000 worth of USDC. And then those funds are used to immediately start market making the market, which is pretty cool because then you can launch a market and you know it has liquidity. So that's the lowest end of the spectrum there. And then once the market matures, then the Mega Vault can automatically deploy more capital to that market. And really the delta there is probably fairly big on more of the major assets like Bitcoin. But that's really how the platform is designed, right? Like the Mega Vault is not designed to outcompete market makers. It's just designed to supplement them.
And kind of get things started.
Exactly, by getting things started with that initial deposit and then scaling up from there.
And there's going to be a prediction markets element to this as well, right?
Yeah, and that's something we've already released on dYdX. We had a pretty good outcome with the Trump win perpetual market on dYdX that was traded a good amount. And that was really just the first experiment that we did with prediction markets. So it's something obviously the market is excited about and we want to continue supporting.
Now, I haven't looked into it, so forgive me, but walk me through, how's the structure on that? Do they trade like perpetuals, or are they like contracts, or is it more similar to?
Yeah, it's a perpetual on the prediction market. So it's cool because it's similar to poly market where the contract resolves to either $1 or $0, but you can trade it with leverage, which is really cool, especially because the moves in some of these markets aren't massive by crypto standards, right? If you're like buying Trump win at 50 cents, then cool, you can like 2x your money. But if you trade with leverage, you can have a bigger opportunity.
Yeah, you can kind of juice it. That makes sense. I think for something that's a bit more of a binary outcome, or, without multiple outcomes, I could see that being appealing to a degen. So that's an interesting, are you worried about getting your phone stolen?
Probably take a backseat to Shane on that one.
Yeah, poor Shane. Yeah, that's really become the sort of zeitgeist of the past quarter, right? It's just a red hot segment, and it's like crypto but you don't really need to know that crypto has anything to do with it to an extent.
Yeah, that's what I thought was cool about it was they have this crypto trading side, but then I thought the app that they launched was pretty ingenious. There's not even trading in it. It's just purely basically a news app. So it's cool to see really these crypto markets start to serve more of a purpose in the real world.
Do you think that DeFi is turning a corner? We're still nowhere. The energy that was that underpinned DeFi summer still has yet to return.
I think it is, and I think we're going through this trough of disillusionment with DeFi for the past few years, but I think we are on the upswing there. And that's how you see all of these things that eventually get traction in crypto go through. It's really, there's a lot of excitement and there's some use cases early on. But remember in DeFi, it was a lot of liquidity mining. It was a lot of hype. And that's great. And that brought a lot of people into the space, but that's not necessarily something that's infinitely sustainable. So I think now you really see DeFi platforms focused on smaller amounts or sometimes zero amounts of rewards and liquidity mining, but more actual use cases. So can Uniswap actually be a great spot exchange? Can dYdX or others be a great derivatives exchange? And that takes time to build. But yeah, I think it is starting to turn the corner. And even within derivatives, you see dYdX, Hyperliquid, a couple others starting to take more market share from centralized exchanges.
UX has been tough, but also developer experience is also quite difficult, but it's getting better.
Yeah, and it's something that is actually particularly interesting for perpetuals decentralized exchanges. And it's interesting because all the perps dexes are really pushing what is possible with the bounds of the technology within DeFi. And really that's why something like a dYdX is focused on building our own blockchain, but there certainly are additional development overheads to doing something like that. And it's not just us. You see Hyperliquid also building their own L1 blockchain, a couple others building innovative L2s. But you really just need this combination of very high performance, but also decentralization to offer a product like a perps exchange. So right now on the dYdX chain, there's multiple thousands transactions per second, all with no gas fees that are going through, which actually makes dYdX chain one of the highest throughput L1s, period. And we built that just around a special purpose application. So it's kind of like we're solving this problem of how do we build really high performance infrastructure and then a great end user facing product at the same time.
Do you think that the rollout of Unlimited would have been possible on Ethereum?
Some parts of it would have been possible, but really the reason that we have this more unique type of infrastructure is to support things like market makers, like more professional traders, which need a lot of throughput, which need really low latency, all these kind of things. So it's possible you could build some kind of exchange that's more similar to a Uniswap, but it likely wouldn't be used by as professional traders. And that's really where the market is for perps.
I see. Walk us through maybe the trade-off though, right? I wonder if there's some, some drawback or downside of moving away from Starkware in as much as it, increases for certain users friction to access the marketplace.
Yeah, and I think there are some trade-offs, and it does take a little bit longer to bridge your funds over right now, though that's something we're working on improving. And one of the reasons why it actually makes a lot of sense to build our own chain is because the main form of collateral on dYdX is USDC. So really all you need is to have that asset on the platform. You don't need to solve this generalized bridging problem of having a lot of different tokens bridged over. And USDC is a centrally backed asset. So we just use Circle's CCTP bridge, which is the bridge that they run themselves, to be able to offer exactly the same native USDC that you would get on an Ethereum on the dYdX chain. So I would say the main drawbacks right now are actually more internal than user facing. It's really things like, can we maintain the infrastructure of our own chain effectively? And we put a lot of work into how can we make an end user facing product that doesn't even feel like its own blockchain. Like you just go to the website, you can connect your MetaMask, you click deposit. It's the same as you would see on any Ethereum L1 or L2 based app.
Yeah, I think that once you have anyone who's, traded on I remember when Solana was having a moment last year around the time of Breakpoint, the just liquidity on some of these DEXs are just so abysmal. Yeah. And I feel like that's always been the biggest impediment. Slippage, liquidity. Yeah. And that's what we're all trying to solve for. I mean, how do you and there's others like Hyperliquid competing in that same space. When you juxtapose it with maybe what they're doing, what are how would you position it as a superior product?
So there's some things that are similar and some things that are dissimilar. So both dYdX and Hyperliquid are based on an order book model. Both have their own L1 blockchains. There's some differences in decentralization. I won't go too much into that. But the biggest difference is both of us also have a vault product now. So they've had their vault for a little while now. Now dYdX is launching the Mega Vault. But what's interesting about dYdX is that it's completely automated. So whereas on Hyperliquid, it's more a central team that's market making based on users' funds. And dYdX, it's more what we've seen work well on other decentralized exchanges. So it's quite transparent, it's auditable, and you can see exactly what's going on. At the same time, it really works well with just launching new markets, as we talked about. And this is a big bet that we're taking at dYdX, that there are going to be a lot of these novel markets that are traded in derivatives. And you want to be able to launch them instantly. You want to have liquidity right off the bat. You don't want to have to wait for any central intermediaries to be able to start listing, market making, or any kind of activity around the given market. And as we said, it's really cool now. And I'm excited for people to get to use the product. You can just see there's now hundreds of markets that you can instantly launch on dYdX, and they will have instant liquidity based on the Mega Vault. So I think it's just the speed of listing. It's an automated product, and it's something that we can continue to improve over time.
What do you think are some unique different types of markets that will launch?
I'm excited to see, honestly. And I think our job is really just to enable more types of markets to be created. And we've touched on prediction markets before. That's something that we've just started to dip our feet into, but there's ways we can improve those. There's a lot of different crypto markets. So one of the cool things about perpetuals and derivatives generally is all you need to trade a market is an Oracle price. So we're in the process of adding a lot of different Oracle sources to the software, things like meme coins and Solana markets generally through Radium. Potentially there could be use cases for Bitcoin ordinals, for other things, for NFTs, potentially for runes, for all kinds of things. And then that's just scratching the surface within what's possible in crypto. One of the things that I am excited about for the long term and people have been talking about in DeFi is, can DeFi be used for trading more real world assets as well? And again, that's something that we are interested in at dYdX. And again, it's a really natural fit for perpetuals. There's been kind of like hype at certain points in the past around security tokens and all this jazz, but it's just really hard to put real world assets on chain. And some assets like the dollar or maybe certain fiat assets have been able to be put on chain, but it's a really hard process. And you just have to touch stocks or commodities in the real world. What's a lot better fit for that is, can you just trade derivatives using crypto rails on a lot of these different types of markets? So excited to see where that goes in the future as well.
Well, this kind of speaks to the idea or notion of the perpetualification of everything.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's really what we're going after at dYdX. And I think that one of the biggest phenomenons that we've seen explain pretty much everything that's gotten big in crypto so far is this continual exponential increase in the number of things that are traded in crypto. And we've seen that be a thing in NFTs and Pump.Fund today, where now there's hundreds of thousands of assets that are listed. And derivatives markets are always going to be targeted at a smaller subset of those, at more professional users. But I think we really need to start seeing this exponential increase in the number of things that you can trade with perps. And that's what we're focused on with Unlimited.
So how do you see the role of a DEX changing as RWAs become more ubiquitous?
I think it really depends on what types of users are trading these products. If it is existing crypto users, then the products probably look pretty similar to how they've looked today. But obviously, all of crypto and especially DeFi is trying to bring new users into the space. So there's just this continued push on, can we make the UX of these products the same as the Robinhood or something else like that? And with advances like Privy, now you can just sign up with your Google accounts. You can deposit money directly in from a lot of different places in different countries. And that still needs to be improved over time. But again, if we can just start to make these products not even feel like crypto products, that's really the goal.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I feel like that's probably the biggest impediment.
Mm-hmm.
I like the name though, Mega Vault. It sounds ominous.
Hopefully not too ominous. Hopefully more massive and big impact.
Yeah, something so big it would scare me. I'd just be overwhelmed by all the liquidity. I wouldn't know what to do.
Overwhelmed by the liquidity.
I'd just be drowning.
Yeah, we're going to make that our tagline.
Yeah, drowning in liquidity.
Yes.
Drowning in the Mega Vault. So what do you see, what are some of the biggest challenges outside of like UX that you see for DEXs? And, obviously like the centralized exchanges are kind of moving more into the on-chain ecosystem with different plays, like, building out their own layer 2s and such. How do you see these worlds converging?
So there's been a lot said about UX. There's been a lot said about infrastructure, and we've been very focused on these things for a long time at dYdX, and we'll continue to do so. But I've actually come to believe that the biggest challenge in DeFi and Web3 generally is more of a product question. It's, what can we uniquely do that no other product in the world can do because it's decentralized? And I think the framing for DeFi has been incomplete for a long time. It's kind of like we've tried to take these products that already exist in centralized finance and build the same thing in DeFi. And then people are like, oh, okay, it's like at best a little bit worse. And that's probably true, right? Like the experience, if you place a trade on a Uniswap or even a dYdX, it takes a couple seconds to confirm. And so you're like, okay, if I just use Binance, this would probably be easier. And that's fair. And I think users do care about decentralization to some extent.
But like how many? Is it?
Right, exactly. It's not that many. And it shouldn't have to be about that. We should talk about transparency. We should talk about decentralization, but you shouldn't have to sacrifice for that. You should want to use decentralization to do something that you couldn't before. And I think we're starting to see new things like Pump Fund be a great example of that. Oh, you just literally couldn't create an asset so easily on any platform in the world before this. And that's just a continuation of what we've seen with ICOs into Uniswap. And so what are these things that should be targeted at more professional traders? How can we use leverage to trade things in different ways than we have before? And what does decentralization actually offer you? So I think that really Unlimited is the first step in that direction for dYdX. It's like, okay, wow, for the first time, basically ever, anybody can come and create a derivatives market that can be traded on an exchange type platform on pretty much any asset in the world. And it's not up to the exchange, and you don't have to go through a big listing process, and you do have instant liquidity. So wow, that's fundamentally impossible before. And can we double down and support more of those things over time?
It's also a bit fairer. I mean, I feel like, I don't know when this sort of became a phenomenon, but market makers have very quickly become like the boogeyman in our industry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true to some extent. And, I don't know if I'd be that negative on them, but yes, I would say it's certainly become a lot more competitive and more zero-sum games being played behind the scenes. And at the very least, it's quite a big hassle for an exchange, for a project to deal with these market makers to get liquidity. So we've bypassed them. And we've already started to see that in a huge way in Spot, right? Where now the thing that you do if you're releasing a token is use Pump Fund or direct to Uniswap, where you don't talk to the market makers first, at least. And then you just release something, it's automated liquidity. And then if the thing becomes big enough, then the market makers want to start trading it more naturally. The bigger exchanges want to start listing it, but you got to have this in a decentralized exchange.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So what are you most excited for the next 6 to 12 months?
Certainly excited for the release of Unlimited. It's been a long time coming. And I think that, like I said, it's just the first step down a path of releasing more novel features through dYdX. After this, really excited, and probably what we'll do is just really double down on the quality of the platform, focusing on things like, can you make trades immediately or in milliseconds rather than in 2 seconds? Can we improve the UX for market makers? They still are important, and I think will continue to be a big part of the game. Just like you want to create this ecosystem of both AMMs and market makers now is how I think about it, and have healthy competition there. So excited for that. But overall, yeah, I think we want to continue to take some bigger bets at dYdX, and we've done that for a long time, but mostly on the technology side. Like, we were one of the very first to build smart contracts on L1, basically the first major project to be on L2, basically the first major project to build our own app chain, and that's been great. And now I think we're in a great spot with the underlying infrastructure to the point where we can start to make more of these big bets on the product side, like, can we offer permissionless market listings that are instant? Can we offer AMMs on derivatives in ways that haven't been done before? And I think we'll start to see more of that.
How much more flexibility do you reckon you have now in terms of what you can do with the product now that you're in your own subchain?
There's a lot more flexibility, and I think it comes in a couple forms. Definitely performance, things like latency, and these are important. May not be the sexiest things to talk about, but it's really, really important, especially to API traders, and that's where most of the liquidity, a lot of the volume comes from on a perps exchange, and it does have benefits for end users as well. So that's a really big thing. And then just being able to really do kind of whatever you want to develop. One of the things that we've run into in the past is when we have external partners, whether that's a totally decentralized chain like an Ethereum, or whether that's working with, an external partner, no shade at all, just anybody like a Starkware or something like that, or any L2 partner that you might work with. it just starts to become challenging because you don't control the entire system. So one other example is we used to use external partners to do Oracle sources. And that's great. Like there's some out there that are pretty good, but it just holds you back because as an ecosystem, you might want to be like, hey, we want to start trading prediction markets immediately, or we want to start trading these real world assets. And there just starts to be more of a divergence between what you want to do and what's best for your end users as an application and what may be best for this general purpose system, whether that's an L2 or an Oracle provider. And you can't just do all the things. It's not as easy. And this is really something that you start to see in more mature technology companies generally. It's like even outside of crypto, when you start a company, you might have a lot of different integrations into third parties, but then your thing starts working and you're like, actually this general solution isn't perfect and I'm going to go build it myself. So it's just really something that we're starting to see with some of these more mature products in DeFi as well. Saw it with dYdX, and I think we've been very early to that, starting to see it with Uniswap and some others as well.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Well, where can folks learn more if they're interested in testing the product or chatting with you
absolutely.
folks?
So we are at dYdX on Twitter and then dYdX.exchange. If you're interested in me, I'm at Antonio M. Juliano on Twitter.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.